Thank you so much for being my guest in From SME to You. I'm very proud I've made this background today.
Love it.
Getting professional. Thank you very much for joining. And I can't wait to hear about your journey in becoming your own boss. So why don't we start there? And you can tell me a little bit about the background story about what you were doing before and how you came to realize that you wanted to set up shop by yourself and, do things your way.
Sure. So I have always worked in marketing, always been at the sort of trade end of marketing in terms of always driving sales rather than sort of more of the brand side, and was working in the digital area for as long as it's been possible, really. So I did the grad scheme at Orange, which doesn't exist in the UK anymore, but went on to work for another 5 years.
Were you client side at Orange?
Yeah.
Because they used to be, I used to work for MySpace eons ago, and they were, I was the account manager for the agency that was managing that account.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I was primarily in indirect sales and then into direct sales. So I was working again with loads of people that don't exist anymore, like The Link, and I don't know if Phones for You still exists.
No.
But Car Phone Warehouse, all those sort of. So I used to work there, and then I moved into Orange Retail, which was their own stores. So obviously, just in terms of marketing phones, I'd been marketing things like WAP before the internet on people's phones. And I remember I was speaking with a girl who used to work for one of my agencies the other day, and we were saying how crazy that we sat and brainstormed, why would people want to take a photo on their phone? Let's see how we can market this capability. And now I've got screenshots where I parked my car, everything is on my photos on my phone. But so I worked there. But when I moved into Orange Retail, I was actually earning some extra cash at weekends by working in a store in Bishop Stortford. So I was sort of living the life of store staff, and then in the week I was doing the comms out to store staff. And at the time it was emails, really, and so anybody in the whole of Orange could email the Orange shops to say, promote my product, sell this, which is obviously not digestible when you're getting all of these emails into a store. So it was really useful for me that I was seeing both sides of that. And we ended up developing an intranet, and that was my first sort of proper piece of work into digital. And a lot of people that work in mobile tend to get sort of pigeonholed and stuck in that industry, and just kind of move around from handset manufacturers and networks and stuff. And I didn't really want to do that. There were so many different industries and brands that I wanted to work with that I wanted to make sure that I sort of moved on. So I went to Unilever, where I managed their e-retail business. So again, this was sort of 2008, so still relatively new in terms of grocery deliveries for Tesco and Asda and stuff. And I got the opportunity to put myself into the joint business plan between Unilever and Tesco and work in their web development team for 3 days a week. So that was looking at like the future of shopping online and what do people want and all of that, which I loved. And was able to use that to then go to Disney, where I was in the e-commerce team for Disney Store. So again, learned loads. I think every job that I've sort of moved to, I've not necessarily been ready for that job in terms of having all of those qualifications, but I've been able to learn on the job and kind of develop. So I was there for 4 years, and then I went to L'Oreal and was digital director there. And I suppose both Disney and at L'Oreal, more and more things were happening digitally. There were more and more opportunities, not just for marketing teams, but for sales teams, things that legal teams needed to know, etc. And so I was starting to spend more of my time kind of banging the drum for digital, I suppose, looking at how we could transform the organization, looking at how people needed to be trained, what capabilities we needed. And I saw an opportunity there in terms of being able to be a consultant, and at the time thought, if I don't do this quickly, everyone's going to be digitally transformed and there's not going to be an opportunity anymore. 8 years on, I realised there's still plenty of opportunity and lots of things.
There's still a lot of training to be done.
Yeah. But certainly I think, though, I've always wanted to work with a whole range of different things. I can't help myself. If someone tells me an idea that they've got for a business, I can't help but be like, oh, you could do this and you could do that. And so working for myself gave me that opportunity to sort of work across a wide range of different industries and clients and sort of pick the people that I'd want to work for. And the other thing, I suppose, is it's really important to me to believe in what I'm doing and to feel like I'm making a positive difference in the world. And by starting to work for myself, I've also been able to start to do other things with my time as well. So I've become a girl guiding leader, and I've got a rangers group in my local village that I lead, and done stuff with the brownies and qualified for Al Gore's climate reality organization and various things like that. So yeah, that was sort of what led me to do it, really.
Brilliant. So in a nutshell, what could we say that what you bring to a business is helping them upscale their digital knowledge?
Sorry, I've just got someone at my door. 1 second, sorry.
Go for it.
Apologies, I was getting my headphones returned from Apple, and normally they just leave parcels, but that guy kept knocking, so I thought about.
That's all right, no worries. So
Do you want to start again from your question? Sorry.
Yeah, so is it fair to say that what you specialize in is to upscale and bring the digital expertise to your clients' teams?
Yeah, so it's basically helping them to make the most of their natural advantage. So my logo, I chose to do a sailing boat because the original sort of new world was discovered just by sailing boats, you know, wood, bit of material for the sail, that was all you needed. Obviously now the digital world is the new world, but I think a lot of, particularly sort of the bigger consultancies and some agencies, make out it's a bit like rocket science because it's more in their interest to do that, to sort of keep business and stuff, whereas I would much rather go into a client and then leave them in a much better position than I found them, so that they can then continue to maximize everything that they need to in-house without having to constantly need outside support.
So you touched on a very interesting point, because we've been talking about the digital skill gap for quite a long time. And obviously it's like a rolling ball, isn't it? Because digital landscape keeps changing, which means that people need to constantly upgrade their knowledge and change what they're focusing on as we go. So what have you noticed in this vast period of time that you've been trading to be the main issues that you come across constantly?
I mean, so I suppose there's a few different things. One is that a lot of senior people in organizations sort of learnt their craft prior to the advent of the internet. And so they tend to fall into two different groups. One, they know that they don't know everything. They embrace that. They try to get extra qualifications. They bring in the right people into their team who do know what they're talking about, and they can then learn from them. But then there is a group that sort of, I think, worry that if they were to admit that they don't know those things, that could potentially weaken their position in their business, or maybe people wouldn't take them as seriously, and so they tend to not want to voice the things that they don't know. So I mean, one thing that I always would say to my teams when I was in an organization, and will say to clients now, is, you know, there are quite a lot of acronyms and things within digital, and I think there's a natural way that if you are talking about SEO, you can say, of course, search engine optimization, you know, then nobody has to say, oh God, what is that? I don't know. You've sort of helped people along.
Yeah,
and then
there's
they
a
can
lot
think,
of
right,
gatekeeping
okay,
by keeping acronyms and keeping things semi-obscure, when in reality doesn't always have to be the case, right?
Yeah, and I think the other thing is people think they need to know everything about it, but actually, you know, you don't know how a printing press works, but you're able to buy a double-page spread in a magazine as a marketer. So it's similar. You don't need to know necessarily all of the tech behind things. You just need to know that these are different channels that are going to help you better reach your audience and give you more insight about your audience. So the principles of sales or marketing have not changed. It's still the same, you know, have your consumer at the heart, make sure that you're meeting the need that they've got. It's just that all of these different digital channels give you an opportunity to reach people in a more personalized way or a more accurate way, really. So yeah,
so since you started your own business, how have you changed yourself as a consultant, or, you know, as being your own manager and being the person that comes in and, you know, relates all the previous experience to those new businesses that you're working with?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can't help but be sort of developed yourself by every project that you work on, really. So it's absolutely true that there are things that I've worked on with a certain client that, you know, then fuels something that I go on to do with my next client, kind of thing. I think the other great thing about running your own business and working with lots of different people is the network that you can build, because then you do meet all kinds of other people that you can draw on their expertise. You know, there are people that I have worked with as a client who I have subsequently brought in on a project that I've gone on to do with someone else, because I recognized that they were really good at a particular area of whatever it was that I was working on. I think that's one of the good things. So sometimes I'll go into, you know, like a startup or a smaller business that is starting to build out its marketing and digital capability. And what I will often do is sort of do the roles as I'm recruiting people into the roles for them. So it does mean that I get an opportunity to see the sort of expertise that's out in the market and what people are doing. And by working across different industries as well, I think there's all kinds of things that you can bring from one industry to another. So I've worked, you know, in health and beauty, in food and drink, in sport, in financial services, comedy, all kinds of different verticals that then you can be like, oh, well, that's quite an interesting approach that isn't being used in health and beauty, but is working well in food and drink or whatever it might be. So yeah, I think it really helps sort of broaden your experience to work with lots of different people.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, you've mentioned that you work with many different types of businesses, verticals, etc. How do you find them, or how do they find you?
It's a bit of a mixture, really. So I am definitely a hustler in that if ever I read an article about a company that's trying to do something new, or I see people talking about a particular new initiative, if I think I could add value to it and I'd like to be part of it, then I will, you know, look on LinkedIn or see how I can contact the company and see if there's any way that I could get involved that way. Other times it's sort of referrals through having worked with one person, they tell someone else, and particularly where I work with like comedians or professional athletes, they'll tend to sort of tell a mate or whatever that way. And then also I've got sort of repeat clients that as they've moved from one business to another, they've then come to me again and said, right, I'm now in a new role and can you help me in this particular place? So it's a bit of a mixture, really. But I mean, my advice to anyone that's in this sort of field is just to sort of keep your eyes open. I suppose the other thing is I'm in a few like groups on Facebook, or I'm a member of Soho Works, so I'm in their app, and sometimes people will post on there saying, does anybody know anyone who could help with X, Y, or Z? And so I'll always reply to those kind of things if I think there's something that I could do there, and that is another good source of business as well.
Yeah, great, because obviously when you work with someone and, you know, you establish that rapport and you work well, is what you say, not only do you have the effect of the word of mouth, but also they carry with you when they go and move on. And in terms of how you see the market right now, and how you know, we're in a moment of a little bit of tremble on the force again. In many ways it kind of feels almost like a flashback to 2020 during the pandemic. What is your sense from what your clients are telling you that there is the most need for right now, in terms of, you know, what a small business can do to really flourish in a time of recession?
I mean, I think the key, I would say, is just making sure that whatever you're delivering is really giving you a return on your investment. So I think one of the greatest mistakes that a lot of big companies make actually is that as soon as there are things like this and recessions hitting, they start to pull back on marketing spend. And I would always say that's completely the opposite of what you should be doing, because if you're cutting back your marketing spend, it's going to be even harder to reach customers and sell products. You need to be selling more. So if anywhere, you should be over investing in marketing. But I think when you're a smaller business and you've got a sort of finite amount of budget for that sort of stuff, you really need to be able to understand where is it working best for you. And I think, you know, if you're a business and you've got an Instagram and a Facebook account and stuff, Meta are not always that helpful in that they just offer the sort of boost post options, which you can end up pouring quite a bit of money into and not seeing a result from. But they do actually also have ads manager where you can go in and properly create adverts and have a few different options of creative that will test to see which is performing better, and you can have clear calls to action and stuff. But I think in Meta's attempt to sort of make it self-serve and super easy for people that might not understand that, you can end up going down the route that's potentially not going to use your budget to the best way. So I think looking at how you can, you know, use things like Ads Manager, make sure if you've got a website that you've got Google Analytics set up correctly, you've got Search Console set up correctly, so that you can see what are the search terms that are bringing people to my website. And, you know, should I be writing more blogs about this particular topic? Should I be putting calls to action on LinkedIn through to my blog? All those kind of things. There are a lot of free tools that you can add to your channels as a small business and really start to understand what's performing, and then hopefully get more bang for your buck, as they say, in terms of your spend.
And is this as a result of this that you developed that digital audit?
Yeah, so I tend to do that particularly for either people that are sort of, you know, independent consultants or coaches, or I do it with people in the public eye, so comedians, athletes and stuff. So basically just sort of do a whole audit of their digital footprint, like how are they performing in search, how is their website working, how are their different social media channels working, have they got the same sort of audience across them, what's their most engaging content that they're producing. And then from that we can put together recommendations in terms of, right, okay, this is the core audience that you should be going for, this is how you can attract them, this is the sort of content that they're going to engage with, and start to build from there. But I think it's, you know, particularly on social media, and there's a lot of companies that will tell you, oh yeah, you can just build a following like that. And, you know, the amount of sort of fakes or things that come through from that, it is all about consistency in terms of social media. If you really want to build a following and build proper engagement, then you've got to be consistent. And that isn't something that you can just decide, right, tomorrow I'm going to start a social media account. You do want to make sure that you're banking some content in advance, that you're scheduling things far ahead, that you know where you're going, you know, not starting a sort of series of, oh, I'll do whatever, and then run out after you've done 3 Fridays in a row because you can't think of anything to do on the 4th Friday. I would say I am very much a do as I say, not as I do person on that. If you looked at my personal Instagram, you'll see plenty of times that I've started, oh, I'll do a change one thing Tuesday post, and then it sort of peters out after about 3 weeks, because I end up always prioritizing client work and then not marketing myself as well as I could. So
And then so when you think about yourself as a business, do you have a changing ambition for what you do? As in, you know, when you look at where you were 8 years ago when you first started versus where you are now and what you like it to be, is there a change in your plans, an evolution of the type of things that you offer, or like, you know, productizing certain things, even growing into a bigger team? What's the ambition?
I think, I mean, I say to people, I still haven't decided what I want to be when I grow up, and I'm not sure that I ever will. So one of the things that I love about running my own business is that freedom to be able to sort of do things that wouldn't necessarily fit in a clear bucket of I am just this one thing. I think I am a sort of facilitator of ideas, I guess, in that anybody can come to me with an idea and say, oh, I was thinking about doing whatever, and I back myself that I would be able to come up with ways that they could make that happen, but it could be across a whole scale of different things. I think I do really love digital from a point of view of just the way it's kind of democratized people's access to all kinds of different things, and I think it's you know, meant that people can have their expectations met a bit more in terms of exactly what they're looking for and stuff. So I do love that. I am a data geek in terms of, you know, being able to look at results of things and see how you can optimize and improve stuff. So I do love all of that element of it, and I love being able to sort of empower people to use those tools, and not for them not to be thinking like, oh, that I can't go near that, that's too technical or whatever, because really it's just sort of tools like you would use in any other way. So I don't think that will change. But in terms of the sorts of things that I work on, you know, I am really passionate about solving the climate crisis, for example. So if there are more things that I can do that move into a bit of a more of a sustainable way of doing business and stuff, then I'm keen to do that. I just did a project with a corporate governance company all around their sort of ESG, what they're doing internally already and how they can kind of communicate that outwardly, and what else that they can do and stuff. So that wouldn't necessarily have been something that if someone had looked at my website, they'd thought that was the kind of thing that I did. But you know, it's all falling into the same bracket really, about communicating things in the best way, but being able to work on things that I'm passionate about. So I think I'm always going to be a bit of a, you know, I am an entrepreneur. If there are different things that I can get involved in, then I will, if I think I can add value to it. I think there are certainly, I mean, when you were talking about productizing things, I think there are, I'm keen to look at that, because I think when you work for yourself and you do consultancy, you are your plant basically, and if you're not running, then you're not earning. So I think it would, you know, be good to look at opportunities for that. But the sorts of things that I'm looking at, or maybe that it would be more sort of off the shelf things like the digital audit, but I would bring more people in that I could train up to do those kind of things, and that sort of stuff. I think, you know, obviously there's all the platforms that you can do online courses and things on now and things like that, or writing books, but because digital does change so quickly, I think doing something like that, you'd end up having to update it quite a lot all the time anyway, so it wouldn't necessarily become that passive. And I think I'm quite cynical about a lot of the boot camps that are offered on Instagram to get your following up and stuff. A lot of the time your following goes up because everybody else on the boot camp follows you and you follow everyone else, and then you think you've all gained 300 followers, but you're actually all just doing the same boot camp. So I'm not sure it's really engaged. So I think sort of working directly with organizations and creating bespoke training courses for their staff and those kind of things are more the sort of thing that I would do from a training perspective. But then I might go completely off on a tangent. I mean, I'm studying masters in philosophy at the moment and really into that, so maybe I'll become a digital philosopher or something in a couple of years, who knows.
I'm sure that ChatGPT won't come for you with that. You mentioned something that is very interesting to me, because you say, you know, if I'm not working, if I'm not consulting, I'm not earning. It's not like a regular job. And I find that, you know, particularly in this space, the way that people price themselves is very different. Some is like, you know, literally out of a hat. Some people have a more, you know, competitive research approach and all of that. What's your process for pricing your services?
So I do it on a day rate, and then I'll sort of estimate for a project how long I think I need. I think pricing yourself is one of the hardest things about working for yourself, and it probably took me 2 years to stop. Like, I tell someone a price and straight away say, but obviously we can discuss that. And I've now got to a point where I can tell them a price and just let it sit for a minute. But I think there is I mean, it's a silly concern to have, really, because I've never had a single conversation with a prospective client where I've said a price and they've just said no, and it's ended. You know, even if they think it's too high, they're going to have a conversation with you about, could you do it for
Yeah.
this or whatever. And so I think, I mean, my advice would be, don't go in too low, because, you know, always put a price out expecting that someone's going to negotiate you down. So put it in a place that you can negotiate from, because if you go too low to start
At
off
least
with,
your
you're going to
room
be stuck.
to still be, you know, profitable.
Yeah, I think the other thing where I'm probably a bit of a mug is that I use Harvest as time tracking, and I've got sort of 6 or 7 clients at a time that I'm working with, and I've spoken to other people in consultancy who their sort of minimum time chunk might be half a day or quarter of a day, and it doesn't really matter what they've done. If they've done something on that day, like a quarter of a day will go in. Whereas if I do 10 minutes for a client on a day, I'll log it as 10 minutes on that particular day and just sort of add it up at the month. So I think they probably get good value, because I'm sure it does take my brain a few minutes on top of that.
Yeah,
To then
you're not
slot
giving
back
yourself
into.
time to do the thinking, the researching, and obviously to do something in 10 minutes, it takes a lot of preparation too. So
Yeah, and that's the other thing I think, and I keep meaning to, this is another prime example, I keep meaning to write a blog about this and I have still not got round to it, but I think you do have to, as the person that is like setting the rate for your time, you have to remind yourself that people are paying for your talent, not for your time. And so something might take me 20 minutes, but it's because I've been doing it for 22 years. And I've put myself through courses and I've read books and I keep up to date, you know, all of that would also go into it. And if you were pricing a product in terms of how much it cost you to make a dress, you would
yeah,
put in the material and the transport of the material and the time to sew it and stuff.
yeah,
Whereas I sometimes just put the time to sew it and I forget about all the raw materials. So I think
yeah,
you should definitely be thinking about the sort of talent cost as well as the actual time that it takes you.
definitely.
Yeah. So
And
I'm
so
getting there.
I will definitely 8 years in the running to reassure you that you can do it. So for
Yeah.
sure. And that was going to be my question, from, you know, how long you've been doing this. What is it that on a daily basis, um, you know, when you have the creeping doubts, etc., that reassures you this is yeah, what I meant to be doing. This is what I enjoy. Is the right thing for me.
There's a range of things, really. I think, you know, interacting with different clients and just being able to kind of buzz off them in terms of whatever it is that you're working on. I think that really sort of fuels me and enthuses me when I'm working on different projects. And I think, you know, it's important to remember when you're running a business and sort of, you know, for the last 8 years, I have been responsible for me entirely, in terms of I have kept a roof over my head and, you know, kept me going all through the pandemic and that sort of stuff. And I don't think that's something that you should underestimate as a business
Yeah.
owner.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other thing, particularly going into, you know, having been in the sort of corporate world and then going into being a consultant and working for yourself, I read a thing, I think it was Cindy Gallop had said that you think that it's more secure being in a corporate environment, but actually if you think about who has got your best interests at heart, there is nobody that's got
Yeah.
them better than you.
Than yourself.
You know,
Yeah.
a business can, I mean, look what happened with Google last week,
Yeah.
just lay off 12,000 people. So from that point of view, I think you've got to remember that you've got your best interests at heart. But the other thing is, the very worst case scenario in these sort of roles is that you would go back into an employed role. And yes, you might have to drop down a couple of levels because you've not been in the corporate world for a few years or whatever, but it's not going to be the case that you're going to lose everything and not be able to, you know, go back into a role. So I think that sort of gives me a bit of extra confidence to keep going, even in the quieter times and stuff. So yeah.
So what comes next, Kate?
Well, I don't know, just keeping on, really, looking at various different clients and stuff, and seeing what projects to get involved with next. I've got a few things that I'm working on as sort of side projects around sustainability and stuff. So maybe a podcast about all things eco might be coming soon. But yeah, I think it's just trying to carve out the time really to be thinking about the next things while you're still working on all the stuff that you're working on. So I suppose trying to get a bit more structure maybe would be my my sort of more mundane objective for the year.
Well, let's hope that 2023 brings this to you, because it sounds like we all need a bit of that.
Definitely.
Well, this is it, Kate. Thank you so much for your time. This has been fantastic, super interesting to know how you find your way into being your own boss and how you absolutely smash it. I think it's super inspirational, and thank you for being so transparent with us.
No problem. Great to chat.
Thank you, Kate.